The HR director's voice was steady and rehearsed, like she'd practiced this in the mirror. Based on our findings, she said, you're being held responsible for the outage. The words hit me like cold water. My manager sat across the table, staring down at the wood grain like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. He wouldn't look at me. I felt heat rising in my chest, anger pushing against my ribs, but I kept my mouth shut. The report with my name on it was already printed and sitting in front of them. Already decided. Someone had to take the fall for what happened. And apparently, that someone was me. I signed the acknowledgement page with hands that didn't shake, even though everything inside me wanted to scream. They thought my silence meant I was guilty. It didn't. It meant I knew something they didn't know yet. Because I'd already seen what really caused the system failure, and it wasn't anything I did. My name is Claire Dawson. I'm a senior systems analyst. I'd worked at this company for 5 years. Never missed a deadline. Never lost a client. Never caused a problem. That morning, I walked into the office thinking they wanted to discuss the repair timeline for the crashed system. Instead, they handed me blame wrapped up in professional HR language. 3 hours earlier, our main computer system had crashed. Not completely, but enough to cost the company serious money and make all the executives panic. By lunchtime, the rumor was already spreading through the office. It was Claire's fault. Claire made a mistake. Here's the funny thing about corporate crises. Companies don't actually look for the truth. They look for names. And the fastest way for leaders to survive is to give everyone a name to blame. My manager had given them mine. The night before everything crashed, I was still working online at 10 o'clock. Testing systems. Writing logs. Preparing reports for the big client presentation we had coming up. Then I saw something unusual pop up on my screen, a late-night override request. It was strange. The rollback safety feature was being disabled. There was no proper authorization attached to it. I hesitated, thinking I should flag it to someone, but before I could do anything, the request disappeared from my screen. The next morning, the entire system went dark. But it wasn't random. It wasn't some accident. This was surgical. Precise. Someone had deliberately bypassed the safety protections I had personally built into the system. And the override request had come from my manager's login credentials. By 9 in the morning, leadership wanted a story they could tell. By 10 o'clock, they wanted an email summary they could send to the client. By noon, they wanted someone they could blame. I watched the whole narrative form like a storm cloud building in the sky. Claire missed the warning signs. Claire failed to keep the rollback system secure. Claire should have caught this. Nobody asked who actually approved the override. Nobody asked why it happened during off hours when almost nobody was working. In this company, being good at your job makes you visible. But being visible makes you vulnerable. I'd made the mistake of being both. So when they suspended me, pending investigation, I already knew exactly what kind of investigation this was going to be. They called it administrative leave. I called it a test to see if I'd fight back or just quietly accept the blame. I went home, opened my laptop, and logged into the backup system I'd designed 2 years earlier. Most people didn't even know it existed. It mirrored every single user activity on our main system, quietly, automatically, in the background. I didn't build it to spy on people or catch them doing wrong things. I built it for accuracy. For recovery. For situations exactly like this. That night, it became my insurance policy. Every override command. Every timestamp. Every hidden deletion. Every change someone made and tried to cover up. I copied everything onto my personal drive. Calmly. Carefully. Methodically. If they wanted to make me their scapegoat, I was about to give them a mirror to look into instead. 2 days later, HR sent me an email with a document called Summary of Findings. It looked perfect. Too perfect. The incident record only showed my activity on the system. Only my commands. Only my login times. Every single trace of my manager's override request was completely gone. He'd wiped the logs clean, or at least he thought he had. But he'd forgotten one important thing: I was the person who built the framework he was trying to edit. Real audit logs aren't stored where most people think they are. They're stored where I hid them, on a backup server that the company had forgotten even existed. And those logs remembered absolutely everything. I didn't write an angry email. I didn't accuse anyone of anything. I just sent a short, quiet message to the compliance department. Some backup files may not match the official incident report. Thought you should know. No anger. No emotion. No defensiveness. Just one simple line of truth. A day later, I got an automated reply that made my heart beat faster. Forwarding to external audit due to client contract terms. That's when I knew this situation wasn't going to stay inside the company anymore. Once the client got involved, nobody in leadership could control what happened next. And the same system that had just betrayed me was about to speak the truth on my behalf. A week later, they called me back into the office. This time, the questions from HR were softer, more careful, almost nervous. Why didn't you escalate the issue when you saw it? Were you aware of the override request? Do you take responsibility for not catching the problem in time? I answered every question calmly and clearly. The backup logs show exactly who approved the override. They didn't like that answer at all. They wanted me to sound guilty, to apologize, to admit fault. But they couldn't push me anymore. The external audit was already happening. And when professional auditors start asking questions, people stop smiling and start sweating. The client's systems had lost thousands of dollars during the outage. They weren't happy about the money, but they were even less happy about the lack of clear answers. So they demanded complete transparency, and a third-party review of everything. Within just a few hours, their auditors had been given access to all the raw data from our systems. I didn't say a single word to them. I didn't need to. Because I knew exactly what they were going to find. The hidden backup system. The original approval logs that showed the truth. The late-night override command that came from my manager's user ID. This wasn't revenge. This was just the truth finally catching up to someone's arrogance. And once truth starts moving, it doesn't stop halfway. The second meeting wasn't short like the first one. This time, legal was in the room. So were representatives from the client company. My manager sat across the table from me, looking like a man who'd completely forgotten how to breathe normally. The auditors went through everything line by line. Every command in the system. Every timestamp. Every record that had been cleaned from the official logs, now completely restored from my backup. When they finally finished their presentation, the entire room went silent. Then the HR director slowly turned to face me. "Ms. Dawson," she said quietly, "we owe you an apology." And for the first time since this whole mess started, my manager looked directly at me, not as his employee, but as the person who had just ended his entire career. He was escorted out of the building quietly that same afternoon. No company-wide announcement. No goodbye email to the team. No farewell party. Just an empty chair at his desk and an inbox full of projects that got reassigned to other people. A few days later, they offered me a bonus for what they called the unfortunate misunderstanding. I didn't take their money. Money wasn't the point of any of this. What I wanted was something much simpler, written acknowledgement that I was never at fault. That my record was completely clear. That's exactly what I got. My manager had tried to rewrite the truth, to erase the evidence, to make reality fit his story. I had just let the system restore the original version of events. And that original file was his complete undoing. I still work at the same company today. Different department now. Different job title. Better pay. But same building. Same company. People treat me differently now, though. Not exactly kindly, more like carefully. They learned an important lesson from what happened. So did I. Silence doesn't mean you're surrendering or giving up. It means you're collecting data. Building your case. waiting for the right moment. I don't argue with people anymore. I don't waste energy on confrontation. I don't need to. Because I learned that silence isn't really protection. Documentation is. The truth doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to shout or make threats. It just needs to be recorded, backed up, and saved somewhere safe. And when the right time comes, when people finally ask the right questions, the truth speaks for itself. My manager thought he could rewrite history because he had more power than me. But power isn't about your title or your position. Real power is knowing that somewhere, in a server nobody else remembers, the truth is waiting patiently to be discovered. And truth doesn't forget. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't give up. It just waits.